Hello, Coder for Coffee here with episode 1 of this log. So, since last time, what have we done? Let's get into it. So, I have a server/host, I have a client, and then another client, so our server network architecture. So, we have our frog that we've begun working on. It does not look like a frog. This is acceptable. This is placeholder art. So, we're going to take over, and we're going to show you what that frog's doing. So, frogs can jump. They, of course, sound like Link. Why would they not? And what else do frogs do? Well, like every good frog should do. There you have it. Progress on frog. What else have we done since last time? So that was our tongue and jump. We have worked on our ability audio. You heard the frog stuff there, and our possession and release. And all of this is happening on every client. You might be hearing a little echo of it even. We have projectile sounds. We have looping audio for our little missile here that explodes. Let's see. Yeah. And we, of course, have death. So let's die. Beautiful. Let's die some more. Yes, and this is all networked now, which was the time-consuming part. So what did it take us to get there? Here are some tables that are queries of my time logged, grouped by feature and skill set. So this left table is more details, so it actually shows like which parts of the systems I touched. And this part on the right, which is what I'll like really show, is what it took to actually work on each of these features. So like the frog itself was a combination of this and cleanup. Cleanup's like a mixture of all. So maybe if there's no cleanup, it's like 10 hours, that 5.5, blah, blah, blah. It's all here, not going to cover it. So now, getting into the details of how do we actually implement this, let's go to the architecture. We modified and made a frog that required some ability. So we started around here. Made a new jump effects and ability, tongue effect and ability. These got routed through my event system. They then go over this network bridge, which then gets to some presentation resolvers. We have an ability resolver now. We have a death resolver. We have a damage resolver, lots of client-side resolutions kind of reacting to those events so that we know what presentation to then display. And then those resolutions get routed into, this actually needs updated. There's only one event that it's then sending that one cell event to the world, target, or source, depending on the content. So then each of these then has that. So somewhere in here, the tongue is then reacting to this information in the presentation system here. We have any audio and camera shaking or VFX getting spawned from those same ability raise events. What else did we do? We did audio, so kind of show what's happening with audio here, but how do we get there? What do we change for every ability? Most stuff was already there because we had an ability cast event. The part that was missing was projectiles. So projectiles I kind of have off to the side because an ability makes a projectile. The projectile then has life and then triggers other events. So in this case, we have now a projectile. Well, actually, it's all one event, but we have different modes of like hit, spawn, despawn, and lifespan. And these all then have different presentation that can route through these systems. So that was the audio part that we had to make. Death was really HP getting dropped to 0. I think HP is in this flowchart at the moment, which raises another event. What was new was I now have some reactions to those events and holding of that state. So that if, you know, a client joins, you know it's already dead. For example, if you join late, the event triggers death countdown timer or anything like that so that your presentation result, animation takes place, your VFX spreads, anything like that we might have seen earlier. So getting into the code, we'll go over like the tongue ability itself, just because it's probably the most interesting and we can't cover everything in the time that we have. So the tongue ability has a profile. Profile kind of defines a bunch of different fields, you know, cooldown, how many times you can cast it, some timing details so that it's not controlled in hard-coded values, because this is all a scriptable object. Now we can reuse it and have different tongues. Yay! For example, like the cone range, maybe you got a big tongue, maybe you got a small tongue. I have no clue, but it makes it fun. So all of this is in a profile that gets forwarded forward through all of these systems. The ability, when it's activated, raise an effect. The effect is called by the effect handler, and its lifespan is handled after some kind of initialization. Our on tick method kind of checks our different timing. Are we in the anticipation window? Are we in the active window? Yada yada. When does the tongue start? When is that timing to see, oh, it's going to take place, or they just finished, they're now in the week period. This is what that is kind of doing. And somewhere in here, we're raising some events. These are our ability cast events with all the different information we need to kind of understand what is the tongue doing and how do these systems react. So somewhere in here, no, actually it's in the next systems, these events then help tell when to show the tongue and when should the tongue do the tongue things. So then getting to the tongue presentation module. This now is listening to this events, and when we have the events in a specific phase, it looks like in windup and active. Then we are activating if we aren't already active, and then we're doing some rig stuff. We have a tongue rig. So anything else interesting here? No, so let's go into the tongue rig driver. This is where we actually visualize. So this is all presentation related. We have the tongue profile from the ability that we then use to understand what we should be doing, some initialization stuff. We only want to run if we have a profile. This was interesting, just networking stuff. You want to make sure you're always using the server clock and not time. I was seeing some really buggy visual behavior when I used time.time instead of the server time. So this points to the server time. That cleaned up all my clients. It was beautiful, super easy bug. And then the actual initialization updating of the rig was really interesting. I'll be honest, I used a lot of AI to make this because I don't know anything about splines, but I had to coach it a lot. And I essentially told it I want to have kind of like a growing sine wave. So it'd be like y equals x times sine x, for example, but with some, different coefficients. So it's essentially a bunch of logic to make that. Hopefully that's what this kind of turns into. But lots of spline stuff. If you want to do something like this yourself, I highly encourage to use Copilot. It was great, and it got me there. But you do need to understand what you're doing to get there. But yeah, that is how we then made our tongue. In parallel to all these things, we also have our presentation systems that are reacting to them. So if I go to like my presentation pipeline, we have some ability cast events, some are in here. So in here, we're then going to determine what the different kind of visual, audio, etc. feedback that we need to take place. Do we shake the camera? Do we trigger audio? So we get those feedback profiles, and then we raise events to the source, target, world, yada, yada. Digging into scriptable objects that we make from that, here is everything tongue. So the tongue profile has lots of different pieces of information. I really like having animation curves in the profile. And again, because this scriptable object and then fees and ability, I can make different scriptable objects for different entities. So I can make different size frogs or different things that have tongues or whips. We can reuse it. So this curve determines the length of the tongue. So it's long most of the time, but has a quick shrink to maximize and then back down, and then different wave tuning pieces. Other different scriptable object pieces. The main things is tongue presentation that kind of defines different pieces. There's some main feedback to the world and some feedback to the world that's specific to recovery. It doesn't look like I bothered filling in source or target at this time. And then UI is really just the icon. So then for the feedback, it looks like really I just have audio. So we heard some audio and we triggered it. This is saying play the fmod event that is tongue. And then there's an fmod event for end. And that's because we have it running and then looping in fmod, and we are triggering the end of it at the same time as we raise tongue end so that the audio completes properly. Looks like the last thing I have in here is the damage and the knockback, all scriptable objects again, knock away from source. We saw things flying. This is why I made this really high, because it's hilarious. To conclude this episode, we'll talk about what we're going to do next time. So here's the scene I spent a little time making. This is going to be our initial arena. We might edit it a bit, who knows? But we want to now take these different entities with abilities and be able to actually mess around with them. So now we need to have a game mode. So the game mode is going to be we spawn one entity per player -1 on repeat until all players die. Those entities are going to have life for a certain time and then disappears. You continuously get kicked out, and it's kind of a race to see who can possess the different entities on screen, and we'll get to kind of just mess around with those things. So I'm going to make the game mode and that life cycle, trying to make so that we can easily restart it. We're probably not going to be in like a demo state quite yet then, or like initial prototype, not demo, but we will have something that we can play with, and then we can start making maybe more entities and abilities. So if that's interesting, tune in next time and come check it out.